Hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Dementia in the Workplace, What We Need to Know. My name is Gabby Lemon. I'm the event specialist here at Workplace Safety North. We appreciate your attendance here today and want to let you know that Feed Your Brain is an ongoing Lunch and Learn webinar series held each quarter from January to December to talk about issues important to you. Before we get started, we want to mention a few housekeeping items. During the webinar, you may see the screen freeze up or hear static on the microphone. This is usually temporary and due to internet connection issues. We appreciate your patience and understanding with the technology. Your microphones have been muted, and we ask that you use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen for speaker questions. If you have any technical issues using the Zoom application, do let us know in the chat box, and we'll do our best to help you. So to clarify, please put any commentary or technical questions in the chat box and speaker questions in the Q&A section. Resource information and a recording of the webinar will be sent to you within 1 business day. Now I'd like to pass things over to co-host Angel Poitras, Community Engagement Specialist and Certified Psychological Health and Safety Advisor at Workplace Safety North. Welcome, Angel.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Gabby. Before we begin our discussion today, I'd like to share with you the trailer for the movie called Spirit Unforgettable. It's a powerful documentary that captures John Mann's journey with early onset dementia. John was the front man for the band Spirit of the West. So join me in watching this video. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We're going to leave you with this one. This has been the most awesome night ever.
Spirit of the West were a total anomaly.
Their songs just stand for themselves.
Musically, vocally, lyrically, they're as good as anyone.
I want to go out with a bang, not a whimper.
I am very nervous about the Massey Hall gig.
You'll have to excuse me, I am not.
I just can't get over how courageous he is to go out there every night, you know, with the potential of a train wreck.
It's a struggle. We arrived in December and London was cold. We stayed in the bars. I don't need to be reminded about what Alzheimer's is like. It's like a white wall, an empty white wall.
Quite often we'll go a whole day where he will hardly speak at all.
It's who I go to. It's different now. I don't have that voice.
I'm so sick from the drink. I need home for a rest. Take me home.
He was an untouchably excellent singer and frontman. I don't know who said it, but maybe Freddie Mercury was in that league for sheer physical charisma, but very few others.
I think we're all starting to feel like we're kind of propping Johnny up to a point where it's starting to lose dignity.
We need to knock it out of the park one more time.
I don't want him to be remembered for a final performance, unless it's an awesome one. So I hope it's awesome.
When we reflect on John's journey, some of the words that come to mind are courageous, powerful, devastating, and inspiring. Our hope is that workplaces can be like John's band and help him play music until he can no longer do it, but join in our workplaces to help others play music. Welcome to our discussion about dementia in the workplace. Most people awarenesses around dementia have been designed to help those of us who are journeying with somebody in our personal life who has dementia. Little has been offered to our employers and what to do when somebody on our team presents with symptoms. So late last year, Workplace Safety in North approached the Alzheimer Society of Sudbury, Manitoulin, North Bay, and asked if they would be interested in designing a 1-hour awareness program for employers. We also reached out to industry for their feedback, and they were happy to do so. And we'd like to take a moment to thank Metso Ototech, Nipissing University, Vermilion River Forest Management Limited, and Spark Employment Services. So those of you who've joined for Feed Your Brain before, you know that we group it into 3 themes. So the 3 themes that we'll be looking at today are as follows. 1, we will look at the disease. 2, we're going to look at how the disease presents itself in our workplaces. And 3, we're going to move forward to the future. So we like to know a little bit about you. So Gabby is going to put up a poll question, and it's going to be this. Is there someone in your life who is currently living with dementia? Answer yes, no, or I don't know. And while you're completing the questionnaire, I'd like to share a little bit about who Workplace Safety North is. We're one of the partners in the health and safety system of Ontario. I'm very proud to be a partner system. We have a vision, every worker home safe and healthy, and we believe that extends neck up also. We live and we work in the communities in which we do work, and we're proud to have part of our team be the Mine Rescue organization, who is known worldwide for the phenomenal work that they do. We believe illnesses and injuries can and must be prevented. Our belief in prevention drives action and commitment to change. Our mission, we're going to be a force for positive action, anticipating and responding to the greatest needs of our clients and bringing together our partners, our members, and diverse communities to build safer, healthier, and stronger workplaces. And today is just one of those conversations. So Gabby, do we have poll results? So 39% of us said yes, we are currently know somebody who's living with dementia, no at 39%, and 22 at I don't know. We thought we would ask the question just to get a sense of who our participants were. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce my guest today, who is, Jessica Bertuzzi. She is the Public Relations and Education Manager for Sudbury, Manitoulin, North Bay, Alzheimer. Jessica has been with the Society for 10 years and has worked on numerous national and provincial committees to help support and develop dementia-friendly communities. She also manages numerous local programs within the Society, including recreation therapy, health promotion, public education, support groups, and community engagement. Not only does Jessica have the professional experience, but she also uses her lived experience to further educate and support those living the dementia journey. January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and Workplace Safety North is very proud to align ourselves with the Society and provide discussion and help raise awareness. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Angela. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful to have you as our guest today, Jessica, and thank you for making the time with your busy schedule. It's a joy to have you manage an hour of your time for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So,
thank you.
To begin our conversation, Jessica, I thought it would be really beneficial if you could just kind of explore with our group today, what is dementia? What is early onset dementia? Sometimes we use the words interchangeably. And I know in preliminary conversations with you, that was one of the things that we talked about. And then maybe we could talk a little bit about signs and symptoms. Would that be okay?
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks.
So I'll start by just explaining maybe the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease, which tends to become one of the most common questions that we receive at our organization. So dementia is not a disease itself. Rather, it's a term that describes symptoms that accompany a disease that affects the brain. So symptoms can be such things as memory loss, typically short-term memory loss, communication skills, changes in personality and behavior. All of these symptoms are significant enough to affect one's ability to perform daily tasks. Now, when we talk about dementia, we always refer to it as an umbrella term. So when you think of things like cancer, so cancer is an umbrella term, and there's many, many different types of cancer, from lung, breast, many different forms. You got to look at dementia kind of in the same way. Dementia is that umbrella term that describes many different types of diseases. So Alzheimer's disease is one of them, the most common one, which is why we hear it the most. It accounts for about 64% of dementia diagnoses. There's other forms like Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, frontal temporal dementia. There's actually well over 100 different forms of dementia. So a lot of people don't know that, which is why it is not an easy disease to diagnose. So I want to make that clear. Dementia is not a disease itself. Rather, it's a term we use to describe a set of symptoms that accompanies a disease, whereas Alzheimer's disease is a specific type.
Wonderful. The umbrella and the analogy with cancer, perfect way to really segment it in my mind. So thank you for explaining it that way. It's really, really brilliant. Very, very helpful. Can you maybe, because we're talking about our workplaces, and we know that one of the discussions that we have is about early onset dementia. Can you provide a bit of background about that, Jessica, what that looks like, what you've seen in your experience in working with the society? Can you share some experience around that for us?
Yes, for sure. So there are two terms that kind of get used interchangeably. So that's early onset and young onset. So we always kind of refer to it as young onset dementia, which means typically refers to people who are diagnosed under the age of 65. So anyone who's diagnosed with a type of dementia, it could be Alzheimer's, could be Lewy body, could be frontal temporal, any type of dementia diagnosed under the age of 65 is considered young onset. Now, young onset has its own, well, it presents its own unique challenges, right? So you could be diagnosed in your 30s, 40s, 50s. A lot of people think that this is just an older adult disease. Actually, the youngest person recorded in Northern Ontario was 37 years old when she was diagnosed with young onset. So I want to make it very clear to everybody that this is not just an older adult disease. Yes, age is one of the biggest risk factors, absolutely. But there are people living their young adult life in their 30s, 40s, 50s who are diagnosed with a type of dementia. So that being said, when we talk about young onset, we have to consider the fact that it presents its own unique challenges. So this population, this age group, are often still very much in the workforce. They might have young children at home. They might have children in colleges or universities that they're assisting financially. So it really presents very unique challenges from social to economic to psychological. So what I'm really hoping today to really get across to everybody is to understand that these people could be working right next to you. They could be in your office every day and you might not know. So there are people out there in their younger ages that are living with a type of dementia. If I can, actually, I grabbed a quote from a 40-year-old woman who's living with actually frontal temporal dementia. And she quoted, "At work, I really enjoyed interacting with people. I worked in a large office, so I was constantly with people all day long. To have to stop that left a massive void in my life. It affected not only me, but my family as well. I wish I could have stayed there longer." So that kind of resonated with me because one of the things that we preach at the Alzheimer Society is how can we support those in our community to live well? So even when they're diagnosed younger in age, how can we support them to continue to do the things that they love? And that includes to continue to work, which is a big reason why we're kind of here today.
Yeah, brilliant quote. I mean, it really captures what the working group wanted. The 1 hour session that we'll explore later in the conversation was, how do we keep these people working? How do we keep our team together intact, supporting each other, much like John's band did. I don't know if you noticed in the video or the participants did, but at one point they put the lyrics to his music on an iPad so he could read them. These were things that were ingrained in his soul. And yet the most powerful comment was by one of his bandmates who said, "We want to help him play music, but we don't want him to lose his dignity," right? And just like this woman, work is part of her life. And when somebody forces you to leave work, it's not the same as when, oh, I'm going to go off on retirement. You mentioned a few risk factors, and you said age is a predominant one, but we have a little bit of time. Could you explain to our group what some of the other risk factors are?
Well, risk factors, of course, are our lifestyle. So we always preach what's heart healthy is brain healthy. But I also want to make it very clear that this disease does not discriminate. You could be of any race, religion, socioeconomic background, it doesn't matter. This disease affects persons all across the board, which kind of pulls us into that stigma end of it, right? A lot of people feel that in order to get this disease, you had to have lived an unhealthy lifestyle or you're weak, and the list goes on. But I want to make it very clear to everybody that you could be the healthiest person. You could have lived the healthiest life. You could be highly educated, and you can still end up with a diagnosis of dementia.
Thank you for that distinction, Jessica. It's much like the mental health conversations that we have, and very much like physical health. You could be drinking the green smoothies, going to the gym every day, and still have a diagnosis of a very severe physical illness. So yes, we can try to do all the perfect things for our mental health and our physical health, but there's still those people that will never know why, right? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to give you a few moments to share with the group. It's National Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and the Society has a very near and dear place in my heart, and I know many others. So can you explain about maybe ways that we can support your organization, or some of the activities that you've done during the month and that you'll continue on with the year?
Yes, absolutely. So of course, like you just said, January is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And a big part of our messaging this month is we want people to feel comfortable in accessing services from our organizations. So like you had said earlier, I work with the Alzheimer Society of Sudbury, Manitoulin, North Bay, and Districts. Very, very long name, I know. Yes. So we cover the North Bay, Sudbury, and Manitoulin areas. We have offices in all three. Our organization, I have to say, is quite special and unique, because I would say 75% of those working at our organization have that lived experience. So we're not just there trying to preach, we actually have that lived experience and understand what people are going through. And we know that every single person's journey is unique. So not one person is going to have the same journey as the next. Our organization provides support services and programs for not only the person living with dementia, but as well as for their care partners and family members. And then we also offer services to health professionals and businesses alike in terms of education. So when we talk about support services, some of the things that we offer are such things as cognitive assessments. We do counseling, support groups. We have a day program, which is a phenomenal program. It's offered in each of the communities that we serve. We have recreation therapy as well as activation support. And we have a phenomenal health promotion group who does all different types of activities, from such things as Minds in Motion or urban polling, and we do them as group activities, so they also obtain that social component to it as well. So we offer a wide range of programs and services for persons who are living on this journey, and we really try to ensure that we follow people from beginning to end, and I think that's very important. We really want to be there at the beginning of diagnosis, or even prior to diagnosis. Even if there's concerns, we really preach to people to try to reach out to us. And then we follow them along the journey, and we help them navigate the healthcare system, which we all know presents its own challenges, especially at this time. So it's really about helping to support these families. It really does take an army of people to help support someone who is on this journey. I know for myself, I thought we came from a big Italian family, tons of kids, tons of grandkids, we could do it. Very quickly, we realized it involves a lot more support than we could have ever imagined. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people in that situation. And then there's people who don't have big support systems. They might only have one care partner. And when we talk about young onset, well, maybe their spouse is typically still working, or their children are in university. So that support system is already drained in itself. So we really focus on trying to support people as much as possible, whether it's just having a phone call and being able to vent and have a conversation, or if it's about finding support services in their home, or being able to come to our programs. We really pride ourselves in being able to follow people from beginning to end of journey.
Thank you for that. And I hope that each and every workplace that's on the call today can feel Jessica's warmth and her passion. And when you walk through those doors, each and every person that you're going to meet is going to greet you in the same way. And that was part of the reason why WSN aligned themselves with the society. We believe there's a wealth of information there for our workplaces that they can guide you on that journey. You don't have to go on it alone. Mm-hmm. And I've been to the center many, many times, and every time I've left, I leave with the sense of just hope and courage and being able to face the future. And that was part of the reason that we wanted to do this special project. So I'm hoping that this comes through, because you certainly excel at what you're doing, Jessica. And the people who work at the society, they're very special people, and they do it because they have a passion. And that certainly comes through. And I think our workplaces could benefit from your expertise and your enlightenment and help them on their journeys.
Well, thank you.
So, Jessica, one question that came to me prior to the conversation was this: is Alzheimer's considered a mental health illness?
Well, I love this question, although it's a very tough one. I have to say that although dementia and mental illnesses share many, many of the common symptoms, they aren't always diagnosed and or treated in the same way. And most mental illnesses can be managed through lifestyle and or medications. In terms of dementia, that management process is a little bit different and can be quite more, significantly difficult. Medications don't stop the disease from happening. It can help manage symptoms of the disease. You know, some people say that it slows the progression. I'm not sure. I sometimes question that, because I always say we don't know what each individual's progression is going to be. So how can we determine if we are slowing that progression? But it does most certainly help manage symptoms. And some of those symptoms are very much those that persons living with a mental illness experience themselves. So depression goes hand in hand with this diagnosis. I will say that at least 75%, if not more, of our clients who have been diagnosed and their care partners will experience significant depression symptoms at some point during the span of this disease. And I always explain to people, imagine being told in X amount of years, you will no longer be able to care for yourself, or you will no longer be able to do the things you love. You might not be able to work at the job that you love. You might not be able to play the sport that you love to do. And eventually you might not be able to recall the faces and or names of your significant other or your children. That can be devastating, and of course, could make anyone feel depressed. Those are very, very real concerns and things that we really work through with our families. I know that if I was told that one day I'm not going to be able to do the things that I love to do, pretty sure I'd be quite devastated as well. So mental illnesses most certainly go hand in hand with this disease for not only the person living with dementia, but for their care partners as well. I have my own personal experience in terms of with my family where a mental illness definitely became apparent throughout their journey living with dementia, so much so that they passed away from suicide. So it's really important to me that we teach coping mechanisms and ways to really live well on this journey, because it is possible. We can live well for many, many, many years. We can continue to do the things that we love to do for a very long time, even after diagnosis. That means we can continue to work and feel as though we are a valued member of our community. We have, I'll give an example of a client. We have a gentleman who loved to play hockey. And although his dementia has progressed significantly, his wife will go and help him put his hockey equipment on, and he gets out on that ice. So yes, this diagnosis can be very, very difficult and hard to understand and to face at times, but you can live very well for a very long time with it. You can still work, you can still drive. Some people still drive. There are things that you most certainly can still do. We just learn to do them differently.
Well, I want to comment on two things. One, thank you for your courage and your bravery to share your very personal story. I'm a firm believer that we're only going to eradicate stigma, make sure we educate people and get people on the same journey that we're on by people like yourself who are brave enough to share very real stories. So thank you very much for that. And two, we can still live well. I'm going to put a shout out to somebody who's on the call. Her name is Cindy. And for a very long time, she's been telling me that even though we have a diagnosis, we can still live well. And she has finally convinced me of that. It was a very long road. So I share with our participants, attach yourself to the society. They can change your view and the way you look at things in a very positive way. So thanks very much. So Jessica, just to end this part of the conversation, if I said to you, what would be the biggest thing I could do to eradicate stigma around the whole umbrella? What would that look like to you?
Well, the biggest thing that I think we can do is educate ourselves. I think education and knowledge is power. And the more we learn about it, the better we can educate others, right? And share the proper messaging. So when we talk about stigma, there's still very much a stigma associated to this disease today. But don't get me wrong, we have come a very, very long way. Even in the past 5 years, I could tell you we've come a long way. When we talk about stigma, it's about no longer using derogatory labels. We no longer use things like demented, that person's demented, or that person is crazy. We're asking people to not use those jokes. And I know most people have, and that's okay. I know it, I've heard it. Every time I go out to do education, let me tell you, I end up hearing a joke of some sort like, oh, I can't remember what you just said, or, oh, I must have Alzheimer's disease. And although sometimes at the beginning I would kind of laugh it off and brush it to the side and hopefully be able to avoid it, I now understand that I wasn't helping the situation. I need to be able to say, those jokes are not acceptable. Those jokes are what makes people feel ashamed. Those jokes are what makes people feel uncomfortable to be open about their diagnosis or to seek support. So it goes against everything that we're trying to teach and to educate people. So to no longer use those types of words and to no longer allow those jokes to be acceptable. I mean, we don't joke about things like cancer, right? We never really make jokes about that. I sure hope not. I think the same thing about persons diagnosed with a type of dementia. It is unacceptable to make jokes about it. So in order to really try to erase the stigma that's still there, it really begins with that education and awareness. And kudos to every single person who is on this video chat with us here today. That's taken a step in a phenomenal direction. And whatever you're learning here today, I hope that you can pass that information on to the next person. And that's how we're going to be able to move further.
Thank you. I agree with you 100%. And changing our language around things is a big one, right? When we talk about mental health in our workplaces and, we show pictures of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Hannibal Lecter in his horror movie. I mean, society portrays these people with mental illness as being criminals, and they're not. They're somebody's mom, they're somebody's dad, just like the people who walk through your doors. We have to see them as people. We need to reach back into our Indigenous teachings and see the whole person. We need to flip the coin. Yeah. It's not just the disease, it's a person. And, when we catch somebody using language that doesn't support eradicating stigma, we have to be brave like you, Jessica, and step forward. The first couple of times you do it, it's very uncomfortable, right? Yeah. And when you catch yourself, it's even worse, right? But you've got to own up to it, and I'll own up to it right now. In our initial conversations, I was calling it early onset, and you said to me, no, it's young onset dementia. And again, today I made the mistake once right at the very beginning. So it's a process. You just have to keep at it and just nudge yourself and make sure you nudge others around you, around the language. When we talk about young onset in the workplace, I've been following the story of the former MP, Lisa Raitt, and her husband. And her husband's name is Bruce Wood. And he was first diagnosed while he was president of the Hamilton Port Authority. And interestingly enough, it was the people that he worked with that noticed it first. He became very quiet in board meetings, they said. He would miss meetings, which he had never done in the past. He started forgetting people's names. And what came from that was somebody said, maybe we should go and speak to somebody. So in our workplaces, as you know, we're going to be looking more and more as we go to the future, potentially people with young onset dementia in our workplaces. What are some of the things that specifically we as teammates, friends, colleagues, supervisors, what are some of the things that we should be specifically looking for?
For sure. Great question. I want to say that I'm going to start by saying that when people start to experience symptoms of dementia or young onset, they are extremely, extremely clever in hiding their symptoms. They come up with extremely unique ways. So their coworker or their family member might not notice some of the deficits that are occurring. So for one of my favorite examples is nicknames. So if they're forgetting a name, they'll often just use a nickname.
Oh.
So, or, you know, there's a lot of things that they'll do to hide it. So the first little bit, we might not even be able to recognize any of the changes happening. And sometimes the symptoms are so minute that it's easy to just kind of brush it aside. But when it starts to become apparent to people, where it's starting to really affect their work, you might notice such things as their personal hygiene might not be as well taken care of. They might not care too much about their physical appearance. They might start to call in sick more often. They might start to socially isolate themselves. So they might not partake in lunchroom banter or conversations, or they might not chime in during meetings as much as they used to. They tend to really become a little bit more quiet because they're afraid that someone else might recognize that they might be having a difficulties communicating some of the things that they want to. It might take them longer to get work done. Their work might be suffering. It might not be as good as it was. So it's very minute symptoms. And to be honest, the symptoms are very much similar to anyone struggling with mental illness as well. They might have more difficult, they might be tired more often. They might not be as motivated. They might be a little bit more short-fused with people. You might notice small personality changes and they might become more emotional. So these symptoms, yes, are quite broad, but they are all stuff that we should be paying attention to on a whole.
But it's really important not to jump to conclusions, right? Like walking around with a checklist and then bringing somebody into like a closed boardroom door. Like, would you agree with that we shouldn't be jumping to conclusions?
Oh, 100%. Let me just say that there's a lot of things that mimic symptoms of dementia too, right? So if someone is not sleeping well, if someone is extremely stressed, if someone has issues going on outside of work and we're just kind of not all
like maybe a pandemic?
Or maybe a pandemic, exactly. There are other things like medications, if they're intermixed with one another, could cause short-term memory loss, kidney disease, vitamin deficiency. So all of these things can cause you to have symptoms that very much look like dementia. So please, please don't jump to conclusions. Again, this type of diagnosis is not easy. We also do have regular memory loss as we get older. We all do. That is known. That's going to happen. That is normal. It might take me longer to remember people's names. Sometimes I tune out. I tend to do that all the time, and I'm just not all there paying attention. So sometimes I might not really be paying attention to what someone's saying and forget it. Or I might be going downstairs and I'll think to myself, okay, what did I just come downstairs here for? The difference is,
thank you for sharing that.
all the time. And I always use the example too. I've done groceries, and people say you put things in weird places. Well, I've done groceries and I've come home and put my milk in the cupboard just because I was so preoccupied with other things going on. So it's really important that one way to kind of know a little bit of a difference is we have, those who are not living with dementia have the ability to recall. Whereas a person living with dementia does not have that ability to recall.
Oh.
So eventually, maybe it's 24 hours later, or maybe it's just a couple hours later, we're going to remember that word that we couldn't. And we'll be like, oh, that was that word, or that's what I came downstairs for. Whereas a person living with dementia does not have that recall ability. So it's a little bit of a difference.
Right.
But yes, like you said, it's so important not to jump to conclusions. And one other thing that you kind of said, don't take them in the boardroom and start having that conversation right away. It really is about creating an environment that is supportive. That is one of the biggest things, because if right away your tone and the environment that you're creating is not supportive, that individual is most certainly not going to feel comfortable and coming forward with some of the issues that they are having, or to say, I've witnessed this in myself. Do you think we can talk about it? Or they're not going to feel comfortable in doing so. And it's extremely important for us as a community and as a workforce to create a supportive environment where people feel comfortable and respected enough to have those conversations.
Yeah, it speaks to the psychologically safe workplace where you feel there's a culture of trust, there's a culture of confidentiality where you can come forward and you're not going to be judged. It's amazing to me how much rests on a good, strong culture in an organization. And I mean, you just spoke to it again, and we speak to it in so many other ways. Now, if I'm working with somebody and I think they're presenting with young onset dementia, and it's been going on for a little while, Jessica, and I'm not jumping to conclusions. I've been watching, I've, stood aside and, I've done some research. Is there a good way to open the doors to have a conversation?
Well, I think that it's very much dependent on the person themselves, right? So very often when people are experiencing these symptoms themselves, they are reluctant to get a diagnosis right away. And often people don't go and get diagnosis till much further on during the disease. People can tend to get very defensive because they're afraid themselves. And that's okay. That's a normal human reaction. So I think really, again, it's in our approach and how we have those conversations. It's about not having it in a public space. So again, it's not about having those conversations with other people in the room. So if you're in an office with 10 people and you go up to Sue and you say, Sue, I've really noticed that your work's slacking and you're not being able to perform as you should be, and the list goes on. Well, right then and there, that is not a good environment and supportive environment for someone to feel comfortable in having those conversations. So it's about making sure that we're bringing that human aspect to those conversations. So speak to them as though and I hope you do, that you do care about them. You do genuinely care about them and their well-being. So just being supportive and understanding. And again, when we are talking to persons living with dementia, it's important that we are talking to them as though they are adults. And it's important that we present one thing at a time. So if I go into this room with this individual that I feel is presenting symptoms of dementia, I'm not going to go in and have this full long run-on sentences, because they're going to have a really hard time following what I'm trying to say. So instead, it's about sitting across from one another with empathy and with support and understanding, and saying, I've noticed a few things. Can we talk about it? Are you feeling okay? Don't be quick to judge them right away, or to put all of the things that they have been, all of the symptoms that you have noticed, to put that on the table right in front of them is going to make them feel scared.
Right.
So it's really important, again, to just create that environment that's supportive and caring. Make sure that your tone is inviting and quiet. It's not loud and boisterous and demanding. I think it's really all about creating that human approach, so human to human being.
With some really good active listening skills, kindness, empathy. Well, very, very similar to our mental health conversations, right? And traditionally, the first one is the most difficult. For our people who are joining in today, we do have about 20 minutes left, and we do invite you, if you have questions or if there's things that we're not talking about that you'd like to talk about, please let Jessica and I know, and we'll do our very best. I'm going to go with the assumption that we're doing it bang on and hitting all the nails on the head, and just doing it because Jessica is just a wonderful guest. She's well-spoken, she knows her topic, and so this is really fun for me. So thanks, Jessica, and very enlightening. Now, we're at the point where I'm going to ask you about the little joint project that we did with Workplace Safety North and our community partners, and the 1-hour awareness program that's been designed. So can you share with our participants today what that is, what it looks like, how they can access it?
Absolutely. So well, one, I want to thank you for approaching our organization to get involved in this project, because it really aligned well with our mission of creating dementia-friendly communities. And that involves dementia-friendly workspaces and workplaces. Whether you're a big business or a small business, getting that opportunity to train your employees, staff, management, volunteers on how to, one, recognize signs and symptoms in your possible coworkers, two, learning how to communicate effectively with persons who are living with dementia, because communication is one of the largest barriers that we do experience with this disease. And then what type of supports are available out there? So what can I do? So this 1-hour training focuses on a lot of what we talked about today. So what types of dementia are out there? What are signs and symptoms to look for? How do I communicate effectively? And then another part of this, or another component of this education session, is we also focus on the care partners as well. So we also focus on the potential of the person living with dementia, but also how do you recognize the signs and symptoms in a care partner? So care partner stress. And we really try to make it applicable to the workplace and what they can do to help support and create an inclusive and supportive environment for persons living with dementia.
So I'm going to turn it over to Gabby, our producer. I think we have some questions from our audience. Gabby, hello.
Hi, thanks, Angel. Yeah, we have a couple questions relating to the workplace. So the first one is asking, what if someone refuses help? Is there anything that we can do to help? So that could be applied in a personal situation or in a workplace situation. And then the second question is, how can a workplace support an existing employee that is living with dementia?
Two great questions. So the first one is, how do we help someone who may not want the support? Well, this happens more often than not. Believe you me, I hear this every day. We cannot force someone to seek support if they don't want it, but we can certainly help push them in that direction. The more that we let people know that it is okay to be feeling what they're feeling and to be experiencing what they're experiencing, the more supportive that we are to these people, the more of a chance we will get them to seek that help. But again, it's not always easy. It most certainly is not. This journey goes through many, many ups and downs. And especially at the beginning, it is very difficult for people to accept diagnosis and to accept support. But it's important that we continue to demonstrate that support for them, that we are here for them and help to push them in that direction without being too pushy, if that's possible.
So don't give up.
Don't give up. Absolutely. And when we talk about young onset too, right, that diagnosis in itself can cause people to say, well, I don't need support right now. That's an older person's disease, or I'm not going to the Alzheimer Society. It's all older people there. when actually it's not. We've had persons in our day program in their 50s, and we've made all of our programs applicable to that younger population as well. So not only do we have activities and programs and those services for the older population, we do of course have that as well for the younger population too. So
great. And the second question that Gabby asked is, how can a workplace support an existing employee that is living with dementia?
So some of the best things you can do is to let them know that you're there to help them. So they might not be able to do the work that they've always done. And of course, it really depends on the industry that the individual is in. So for example, let's say the person is a heavy machinery operator. Well, we might have to consider the fact that that individual might not be able to operate that equipment safely. But we also don't want to make that person feel as though they are not a valued employee. So instead, it's really about us and businesses and workplaces being able to find other ways to help support that individual in feeling as though they are an important staff member in that workplace. So they might not be able to do the things that they've always done, and they might have to do things differently, but they most certainly still have value to bring to these organizations. And I really feel like businesses need to be more open to not having job loss be something that we are saying right away, but instead finding ways to help accommodate this employee to remain a valued employee. So they're not just a number. It's about making sure that we are supporting that individual. And that support comes from top down too, right? So that support has to be from employee to employee, manager to employee, supervisors, and the list goes on. It's really about creating that environment that is supportive for that individual to remain a part of our workforce.
There's been another question that popped up. If somebody is a caregiver for somebody who refuses help, there are support programs, correct? With a question mark. So I think that's specific to your society.
Yes, of course. So like I had said earlier, our programs are not just for the person living with dementia. I mean, we most certainly provide that support and education and counseling for the care partners, if not more. Care partners really need to know that they are not alone on this journey. Sometimes that's coming from our staff, and sometimes that's coming from peer-to-peers. So we as staff learn more from our care partners and families who are living this journey. Yeah. And that's how we can share our knowledge, by we learn from them, and by understanding what other people are going through, you might learn tips and tricks and strategies that are really going to help you on this journey. So 100%, we have a number of different programs and services available for care partners to help them, even though their loved one might not be prepared to access any type of support.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So going back to the 1 hour awareness program for our employers and our workplaces, is there going to be any cost involved with that?
Absolutely not. So for most of our education, especially our public education, there is no cost to this.
Yes, thank you.
We have some phenomenal education staff on hand who are available to do this education, both in both official languages, in English and in French. So I'd like to make that known. There is no cost to this particular education, no.
So if I'm an employer, Jessica, and I want yourself or one of your team to come in and do the 1 hour program, how do I go about that?
Well, the best thing to do is to reach out to our office, and they will transfer you over to one of our education staff who will make sure to get that set up. And we are very flexible and accommodating. Of course, right now, this is all via Zoom, which has been, I feel like we're becoming Zoom masters lately. But of course, right now it is via Zoom, and we do daytime and evening. So we're very accommodating as an organization to make sure that we can provide that education to workplaces in our community.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. The flexibility is also a key factor, right? Because not every industry works 9 to 5 or 8 to 3. And so I'm just looking at the chat, and somebody is saying, so you're saying to work with their remaining abilities as opposed to focus on the abilities that have been lost. And our friend Cindy from from Alberta Society has followed that up with, this really requires a team approach to help identify what those specific challenges are. And I think there's one stream there, but I'm looking for your kind of feedback on that.
No, 100%. Like I said earlier, it really takes a small village of people to really help persons on this journey. So like Cindy had just said, it takes a team effort to help support that person living with dementia in the workforce. Whether it's small things like reading something out for them, or just re-explaining something, the directions in a different way, or maybe just walking with them to certain meetings, those extra reminders, or helping to create notes for them, reminder notes for them. It doesn't have to be this massive, large effort, but it's that team effort and when we can all come together and help support them.
Okay, great. Kim is just asking, is there an email address? Kim, tomorrow, our wonderful producer, Gabby, will be sending a recording of today's session with all the resources attached. So you will have the direct contact information for Jessica and her team. I just wanted to clarify that for Kim. So is there any discussion at a higher level, like at a legal level, about the legal rights of those with young onset dementia in the workplaces? Has that come to fruition yet, Jessica?
Not that I'm aware of, and I don't want to speak to something that I'm not quite knowledgeable yet. I know that we have been coming a long way with our provincial and national dementia strategies, and that's a big part of it, is how can we keep persons living with dementia supported and in the workforce, and especially those living with young onset who need those dual incomes, right? So it's really about, I think we are coming a long way and those conversations are being had. And I think that HR departments are looking at policies and procedures to really help assist this population of people.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I was made aware of a case study it was actually in Alberta with a health organization where one of their teammates came forward with a diagnosis of young onset dementia. And that started the ball rolling as to the change in policies and procedures, what was needed to help this person be successful for as long as they could. But to John's teammates, maintaining dignity, making sure safety of everyone involved, including the person with young onset, but those around them. And thank you for mentioning that. It may be very different from somebody who works with paper than to somebody who works with dynamite or a large piece of equipment. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration. It's a big journey. It's a long journey, but today is the first step for many of us. And, Jessica, I wanted to thank you because you make it very easy to have the conversation. And just with mental health, it can be very difficult. And often the first conversation is the most difficult. And if I can, implore those that are online, reach out to Jessica and her team, have them do some kind of presentation to your workforce. It doesn't hurt. It makes you feel good. And if there's one thing we can do is demonstrate kindness to the people around us. And like Jessica said, learn to actively listen and find ways and solutions to support those and help them like John's band did, play the music as long as he can with that passion, because lots of people have passion for the work that they do. And, I'm touched by John's words when he said, I don't want to spend any more energy trying to hide my symptoms. So thank for his courage, because he's trying to eradicate the stigma associated with his diagnoses. And he also went on to say, I don't want to feel embarrassed. I want to accept what has happened and live. And you've shared that too, because you've told us, as Cindy Bond has, we can live well. I will continue to make the music and I will continue to do shows. So my hope is that the employees and employers are on this call today can help us help those around us to continue to make the music in our workplaces. And Jessica, we end each and every conversation with our guests giving us their words of wisdom. I want to thank you for sharing what you have shared with us. You've been a brilliant guest, and I look forward to your words of wisdom.
Oh, Shala, how do I narrow this down? I don't know. My biggest thing, if I can get people to take from this, is that let's not be so quick to judge people, as we never know what they are going through outside of the workplace. Instead, let's learn to be quick to help and to understand. And that understanding starts right here with awareness and education. And I think, like I said earlier, knowledge is power. What's the harm in educating yourself a little bit more when you can help someone? So thank you so much for today. And thank you to everybody who was on this video. I really enjoyed being able to chat with everyone. And again, please don't be afraid to reach out. I love to talk, so no question is silly. Please don't be afraid to reach out, and thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Meg and Gabby, and each and every one of you. Go out and have the conversation and take Jessica's words. Be quick to help. Stay well. Goodbye.